It's like the Democrats paid these people off. Hey, let's pay them off. Let's make it look like the Republicans can't govern and don't deserve any gavels whatsoever.
But they did it for free.
Your friend Rand Paul had this to say.
We are acquaintances at best.
I'm literally missing 15% of my right testicle.
Fear not each sudden sound and shock. 'Tis of the wave. Excuse me. 'Tis of the wave and not the rock.
I'm sorry, is it open mic night? Is that what we're doing in the Senate? I thought we were having an impeachment trial.
I did liken Tucker Carlson to an after-meal shit earlier in the show.
You did. What sort of Eve ate the apple, Pandora opened the box bullshit did we just step into there?
This is Facts and Friends.
Welcome to this, whatever you do, please don't settle Dominion voting machines episode of the Facts and Friends podcast.
Absolutely.
My name is Tino, and joining me this week is my friend and co-host. Most of you know him as the guy that taught Matt Walsh everything he knows about mermaids, but I know him as Judson. Hello, Judson.
He was a terrible student, I just want to be clear. So I may have taught him everything I know about mermaids, but he did not, in fact, learn.
He didn't retain it?
No.
Well, we'll hear more about that later. It does seem, Judson, that Dominion is not settling as of right now.
That is the way people are reading the tea leaves. Yeah, I'm not a lawyer,
I'm
so I
worried they're
can't.
going to cave because corporation's going to corporation, you know?
Oh, they are. They absolutely are. And people were saying, like, they're going to win the suit, and they definitely won't settle. They got Fox right where they want him. But, like, they just want money. That's what they want.
See, I don't agree with you.
Oh, okay.
I have a hope that the main thing that they're looking for here isn't money at all, that it's clearing their name after like the far right misinformation media just completely smeared them and lied about them. So a settlement with a gag order isn't going to accomplish that.
Oh, no, I think they should be, if they were to settle, any settlement that they would take would have to include Fox setting aside a portion of their broadcast like every day for a period of time to correct the record.
No way Fox does that.
No way Fox does that. And I don't think Dominion should settle for less than that, right?
Right.
But yeah, so I don't see them coming to terms here.
I think the money they asked for was an attention-grabbing figure.
Yeah.
But what they're out for here is redemption.
I guess we'll see how it goes. Like I said, the legal scholars are reading the tea leaves as if it's on, there's no settlement.
Okay.
But you never know.
Oh, future Tino here. I know you can't see me. I'm holding my face in my hands, just shaking my head back and forth. Why, Dominion? Why? I guess I'll let you get back to the show. I need a drink. We have quite a show for everyone this week. Donald Trump goes full puddin finger. We find out Clarence Thomas is even more of a corrupt liar than we thought.
And we thought a lot, just to be clear.
We gently urge Diane Feinstein and her people to do whatever it takes to replace her in the Senate immediately. Gently might be understatement. Some kid just wants to be loved, so he betrays his country. And Judson tells us why Republicans have invented the concept of woke to control their base.
I guess we'll see.
Let's get things started by getting our fingers just a little bit dirty, Judson.
Oh.
A Trump super PAC hit Rhonda Mantitz on his hands last week, Judson. They hit him on his hands.
Because they're so large compared to Trump's?
No.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to play the ad they released. But before I do, by the way, it was entitled Pudding Fingers.
Okay. I like where this is headed.
I feel like I need to provide a visual for this audio experience. So a visual companion.
Another one of those.
So if you haven't seen it, all of the voiceover you're about to hear takes place as an actor portraying DeSantis messily and repeatedly sticks his often already pudding-covered fingers into a kid's cup of chocolate pudding and then shoving those fingers into his pudding-smeared mouth. So they show this a few times from various angles in the course of the ad, usually in close-up, and it finishes up with a close shot of a bunch of half-eaten, overturned chocolate pudding cups, like spilling what remains of their goopy brown contents onto a placematted table.
What does the actor's call look like for this sort of a role? Like, how do they find someone?
We're going to get to that.
Okay.
First, let me play the ad.
Sure.
Ron DeSantis loves sticking his fingers where they don't belong. And we're not just talking about pudding. DeSantis has his dirty fingers all over senior entitlements, like cutting Medicare, slashing Social Security, even raising our retirement age. Tell Ron DeSantis to keep his pudding fingers off our money. Oh, and somebody get this man a spoon.
Make America Great Again, Inc. is responsible for the content of this advertisement.
Okay. So you asked about the casting.
I did ask about the casting. Like, I just don't. I'm just curious, like, what that looks like. Do they put that in the newspaper? What does that look? How does that read?
Well, they badly miscast the DeSantis actor, in my opinion.
Oh, okay.
So you only see this guy from like the nose down, okay?
Uh-huh.
And usually it's either his hands or his hands shoving pudding into his face. The guy looks like he's in his 20s. He's not remotely overweight. He's young. He doesn't look anything like what you would picture a hit ad on DeSantis would look
Donald
like.
Trump's favorite thing to say about someone is that they look like they just came from central casting, like they perfectly encapsulate a role. Like, how do they get this wrong?
This was a huge missed opportunity.
Yeah.
You should have cast a pudgy little 45-year-old community theater actor.
I mean, and I know a few of those guys, so like we could have found you one. I mean,
Easily. They should have let me cast this.
yeah. I don't understand why I have to agree with an ad, though, put out by Trump's super PAC. That hurts.
Well, as they're attacking each other over this next year or so,
Yep.
you're going to find yourself agreeing with each of them quite a bit.
Yeah, you're probably
as they
right.
attack the other.
Yep.
But they're both contemptible human beings.
Awful. It doesn't make me like Trump any better, obviously. It just means that he's right about DeSantis.
Well, speaking of contemptible human beings, do you remember last week when Clarence Thomas just rated a 10 out of 10 on the corruption scale, Judson?
I do remember those simpler times.
Ah, yeah, the good old days. Well, after more news broke last week, Clarence is looking down at a 10 at this point. Way down.
Yeah.
So here's what we reported last week. There was a clear case of inappropriate gifts, of luxury travel that Clarence Thomas failed to report. And there was that evil billionaire supervillain with an extensive collection of Nazi memorabilia and a garden full of statues of evil despots.
Yes. My favorite part.
Harlan Crow. So after that, this is out of like threat level midnight.
Yeah, this is like
stuff,
cartoon
right?
villain level stuff
Yeah.
we're talking about.
So I thought Thomas could only go up from there, right? There's no way it could get worse.
Sure.
It got worse.
The Scooby Gang pulled off his mask and
Well, so Crow has also done some undisclosed real estate deals with Thomas.
Yeah.
He also donated $500,000 to a far-right organization that paid Thomas's wife, Ginny, a six-figure salary.
sure.
Crow would be Clarence Thomas's mother's landlord, but he doesn't charge her rent.
Well,
so there's that.
I mean, that's nice of him.
Also, not one, but two groups connected to Harlan Crow have perfect litigation records on cases they put before Thomas. American Enterprise Institute is 3-0, and the Center for Community Interest is a miraculous 8-0 with Thomas.
8-0. What a stellar legal minds they must have.
Remember last week Thomas came out with the second worst defense of terrible actions that we had on the show?
What was the
Most
worst?
weeks he would have gotten first place,
Right.
but last week he happened to be up against the Dalai Lama's handlers explaining away child sexual assault as just, quote, His Holiness's zany sense of humor.
Okay. First of all, it was attempted child sexual assault, right? Wasn't it?
Boy, you love defending these people.
I just want to get the allegations correct, Tino.
Okay.
I don't just getting sued by the Dalai Lama or whatever the fuck would happen.
So remember last week, Thomas's horrible excuse was that he'd consulted with colleagues and that they told him he didn't need to disclose things like luxury travel on private jets or super yachts.
A lie or a wrong statement.
Here's the thing. 20 years ago, the LA Times reported on some inappropriate seeming gifts Thomas had disclosed. And so what did he do? He stopped disclosing them.
Oh, he just didn't pretend like he didn't get them anymore.
Didn't stop taking them.
Yeah.
He stopped disclosing them.
I mean, that seems like a perfect fit, right? Perfectly to do right there.
He used the whole colleagues disclosures thing. If you look at his current colleagues disclosures, you see like an odd and seemingly overly inclusive disclosure strategy on their parts. Gorsuch disclosed a receipt for a fishing rod and cowboy boots. Alito disclosed receipt of a bronze cast of a hand. I don't know whose hand it is.
That was my question.
I don't know what he uses it for, but he disclosed it.
That's a fanfic ripe scenario right there.
It really is. Is it RBGs? And if you take the bronze off, it's a real hand.
Is SCOTUS fanfic a thing? Does that exist on the internet somewhere?
I think it is.
Oh.
You know, Strict Scrutiny, the SCOTUS podcast I listen to, is accepting questions, and I really wanted to send them in one. So now maybe that's the question.
The question you asked.
Is SCOTUS fanfic
Is SCOTUS
a thing? Follow-up question. Whose hand was the broadcast of? All right, I'm going to send that in.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny that Gorsuch didn't disclose the biggest gift he ever got in his life.
His Supreme Court seat?
Yes, exactly.
Well, that wasn't this year, right? So
It wasn't, but he was still a federal judge, though I'm not really sure what the rules are around the disclosure of stolen property. So
that's a good point.
now, Judson, one last thing on this Clarence Thomas thing. You can say all you want about none of these gifts affecting the outcome of any of his decisions. In fact, if I recall correctly,
I did say that, yeah.
you came leaping to Thomas's defense last week when the initial ProPublica story dropped.
I don't think that's how I would describe it. I don't think that Clarence Thomas has been bribed, and I don't think that Clarence Thomas has made decisions that he wouldn't have made without these gifts happening.
Already in this show, you've also defended the child tongue-sucking Dalai Lama. Last week, you're defending Clarence Thomas.
Again, not how I'd characterize either of those actions, but okay.
I'm the one characterizing them.
Clearly.
Per ProPublica's Justin Elliott, one of the journalists who reported the Thomas story, Clarence Thomas has changed at least one pretty substantial position. I don't want to get too deep into the legal weeds here. We'll leave that for podcasts like Strict Scrutiny.
Yep.
But the Chevron doctrine is basically a view of deference to the authority of administrative agencies.
Okay.
Back in 2005, Thomas seemed to be a solid proponent of this doctrine. However, after many of the gifts and deals that Thomas failed to disclose, he seemed to come around to Harlan Crow's side of this issue and is now one of the biggest opponents of the Chevron doctrine.
Okay.
I'm going to pause here, Judson, for you to find some new indefensible justification for Thomas's behavior.
I mean, if that's true and Thomas is the only one who changed his opinion on that issue, then okay, maybe this gifts did have the intended effect of bringing him around.
I don't think you could ever make a case for the sort of causality there. There's just not enough evidence.
Well, you couldn't prove it, of course.
Right.
I'm also wondering, though, that like the Republican Party itself has come full tilt on several key issues.
He has shifted along with the Republican Party.
Exactly. And they didn't all get, did they all get gifts from Harlan Crow?
Anyway, you heard it here, folks. That's how Judson's defending Thomas this week. There's an inadvertent theme to the news roundup this week, and it's you defending horrible people.
People Justin's going to defend.
So originally, we'd planned to tell Diane Feinstein that she needed to fucking resign.
Yeah.
Well, actually, originally, we called for her to resign way back in October 2020 after she praised the hearings leading to the hypocritical last-minute installation of far-right hack Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court to replace Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Considering all of that, the grotesque political theater that we witnessed this week, this is how ranking member Diane Feinstein of the Democratic Party, important to note here, had to sum up the proceedings.
Di-fi.
This has been one of the best set of hearings that I've participated in. And I want to thank you for your fairness and the opportunity of going back and forth. It leaves
talking to Lindsey Graham
with a lot of hopes, a lot of questions, and even some ideas, perhaps some good bipartisan legislation we can put together to make this great country even better. So thank you so much for your leadership.
What was she in a different hearing?
I don't know if she's in the same dimension as we
Did
are.
she just come from that alternate reality where Hillary Clinton won the 2016 election?
She needs to resign right now, not just from that committee.
She won't.
Resign her Senate seat. I mean, that is disgusting. How can you?
Maybe it was a well-run hearing. I didn't watch because, like I said, it's.
Jesus Christ, Judson, why are you always defending the bad ones?
You just end the clip there?
Yeah.
Didn't I defend myself at the time?
You were defending her.
No, I wasn't defending her. I think there was a follow-up to maybe it was a well-run hearing, but it wasn't a good hearing. Obviously, there wasn't bipartisanship.
The clip got cut off somehow. I don't know.
It's weird how that always happens.
When the contextualization or the exculpatory part happens, we don't need that. The audience isn't interested in that. So we weren't ahead of our time back then either, Judson. Democrats, as usual, are behind the time.
Yeah. It's remarkable how long they can go on making the wrong choice over and over and over again. While people like us, let's be honest, we're not special, insight. We don't have special insight into this sort of thing. We're just looking at what's happening and being like, hey, that seems dumb. Why are we doing this? And yet these people we elect can't fucking see it.
Okay, let's fast forward back to 2023. Late last week, when we first considered talking about this story, it was because, due to her health, Feinstein is unable to attend Senate Judiciary Committee meetings. You know, where judges get approved to go before the full Senate.
The one thing we can still do without the House?
So without Feinstein, there are an equal number of Republicans and Democrats on the committee, and you can't advance a nominee out of committee to the full Senate if the vote is tied.
Right.
So initially we scrapped this story altogether because Feinstein agreed to be temporarily replaced in the Judiciary Committee. That cleared the way for the nominees to get out of the committee to the full Senate. But here we are on Monday. When we've learned that replacing Feinstein on the Judiciary Committee requires 60 votes to avoid filibuster, and Republicans have made absolutely clear they have zero interest in helping out the Dems. You don't blame the GOP for this decision, I'm sure of that. But actually, I don't either.
Come on, the GOP is going to GOP. It's what they're going to do.
Yeah. Look, if we had known that you could filibuster something like this, we'd have laughed in Dick Durbin's face.
Absolutely.
I just didn't know you could filibuster. This seems like a pretty minor administrative thing.
It seems like a ridiculous thing to require 60 votes to push forward.
Well, I'm sure Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema are still against the filibuster.
They've done some limited carve-outs, but yeah, it's not going to happen.
Anyway, here we are, back full circle. Diane Feinstein and her people need to get their shit together and have her retire from the Senate immediately. Problem solved.
Yeah.
We don't need to RBG this shit again.
Well, that problem solved, new problem created.
What's the new problem?
Well, there's going to be a big race for her seat anyway when she was retiring before, right?
I don't give a shit. It's not about one individual person. And if Dems don't start realizing that they can't look past their egos.
No, I agree. We didn't end up talking about it last time, but that's holding back some of those people who want to run for her seat from calling for her to resign because they don't want to face a appointed incumbent instead of the people that they were going to face in an open primary, right? Well, don't you think? I mean, Schiff and...
I think you're absolutely right, but that's selfish and short-sighted, in my opinion.
Agreed. Absolutely agreed.
So get it fucking sorted, okay? We can't go almost 2 years without Biden appointing any judges.
It's the running gag that Dems are in disarray, but right now on this particular issue, Dems are in disarray.
Finally, in our news recap this week, a 21-year-old gamer who did IT for the Air National Guard shared classified military documents to some teenagers on a Discord server. Finally, a story we can all agree on, left and right. Sharing sensitive classified military information to gamer kids, and by extension our enemies, over some public chat server is criminal. And anyone doing so should be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. Right, Judson? Right? Please tell me that's right.
Their only job is to tell the truth. And yet tonight, the news media are celebrating the capture of the kid who told Americans what's actually happening in Ukraine. They are treating him like Osama bin Laden, maybe a little worse, actually, because unlike Al-Qaeda, apparently this kid is a racist.
Jesus. Wow. Did he try to sneak wokeness into that?
A little bit, yeah. We'll get to that in a minute, Tucker.
And then this came from a mad woman congressperson and brand new podcast host, Marjorie Taylor Greene. Judson, do you want to read this tweet for us?
I mean, why not? Jake Teixeira is white, male, Christian, and anti-war. That makes him...
Also, I hate to interrupt your tweet.
Of course you do.
But also, his name is Jack, not Jake.
it's Jack Teixeira, but this says Jake, so I'm going to read it.
It does say Jake. You're an anchor man.
Jake Teixeira is a white, male, Christian, and anti-war. That makes him an enemy to the Biden regime. And he told the truth about troops being on the ground in Ukraine and a lot more. Ask yourself, who is the real enemy? A young, low-level National Guardsman? Or ...
Oh my God. Who could she mean there?
I really think, given the intellect of a lot of her followers... of
Harlan Crow?
Of a lot of her followers, I feel like she really ought to fill in all the blanks. Because they have shown a very limited ability to do that on their own.
Oh, they fill in every blank with either liberals, right, woke people.
Yeah.
I don't think she needs to fill them in at all.
I'm disappointed she has a podcast because I feel like that means we have to quit. Once
I bet she already has more listeners than we do too.
Of course she does. But
does she have a Patreon?
she's in it for the grift, so she's got to have some way of generating funds, right?
I guess.
Yeah.
So this kid, Jake Teixeira,
aka Jake Teixeira,
had access to some pretty sensitive documents containing information on the Russia-Ukraine war, including potential troop movements. I had to chuckle. This is a bit of an aside as well, with the way CNN reported about his Discord server.
Sure.
This is from the CNN report. Quote, Teixeira is believed to have been the head of an obscure, invite-only Discord chat room called Thug Shaker Central. Okay. CNN, listen up. Nearly all Discord servers are invite only.
Thank God.
And nearly all of them could fairly be classified as obscure. And in fact, we ourselves happen to be heads of just such a server. Anyway, this Teixeira kid leaked these documents starting back in December, and they were found not only on his Discord server, but a few others. And now he's a fucking hero to the right? Because, Judson, why is he a hero?
He's a hero because...
Is this Ed Snowden shit?
It's Ed Snowden shit and Julian Assange shit. Because they can twist what he had to somehow cast the administration as the bad guys, right? Therefore, he's a hero, like the enemy of my enemy sort of thing.
When did the Republican Party get in bed with Russia?
Definitely happened by the time Trump was there. I mean, was it just Trump? I don't know if it predates Trump.
You listen to Tuckums there, and you listen to a lot of them talk about the illegal invasion of Ukraine by Russia, and you would think that they were all bought by Russia.
They are either bought...
That's how bad it's gotten.
Yeah, they're either bought by Russia or they see... I don't know, man. I feel like you're right. It's got to... Why would they say that? They've chosen Russia over America for 7 years. I mean, that's been the thing. Ever since Putin became a central figure in the Trump saga, they've been picking Putin over us. Back in 2016, those guys were wearing shirts, rather be a Russian than a Democrat.
Well, speaking of compromat, Lindsey Graham called MTG and other Republicans irresponsible for defending Teixeira.
Sure, that's a word.
There is no justification for this, and for any member of Congress to suggest it's okay to leak classified information because you agree with the cause is terribly irresponsible and puts America in serious danger.
He must be having allergies too, because he sounds a lot different than he normally sounds on this show.
He sounds very different from his usual spots.
Yeah, very deep voice.
I don't remember who said it, but I saw it on Twitter, and someone said that if a Democrat had made a similar statement where the Republicans were pushing for charges against someone, and a Democrat had made a similar statement of support of that person for leaking classified documents, Republicans would be up in arms and demanding that we remove that Democrat's security clearances. Like, they shouldn't have access to classified intel if they think this is okay to do.
Judson.
Yes.
They are doing that with Lindsey Graham, though. They're saying he's not mentally fit to serve. They are actually doing exactly what you're describing to Lindsey Graham.
Oh, so they're saying that's Lindsey Graham
I didn't grab the audio because I wasn't going to go down that path, but yes. Well, I saw a video of Fox News attacking Lindsey Graham as mentally unfit based on his comments.
But I'm saying Democrats should be doing that about MTG. They should be calling for her to lose her classified access, because if she thinks what Teixeira did is okay, then why should she have access to classified intel?
I mean, it would just be political theater, but why not?
It's all political theater.
Anyway, I'm also sure that Lindsey will change his tune as soon as he sobers up and remembers the dirt they have on him.
You're right. He will.
We'll be right back.
Hey FNFers, Tino here. I wanted to take a minute to tell you about a new way to support the Facts and Friends podcast. You can become a supporting listener by subscribing to our Patreon page at patreon.com/factsandfriends, all spelled out. Between our hosting service, recording equipment, and editing and production software licenses, it costs us a decent amount to make this show for you, so we were hoping you might help us at least break even. So, what's in it for you? Well, first of all, you'll help keep the show on the air. But wait, there's more. All supporters will get access to the Facts and Friends Discord server, where you can interact with the Facts and Friends community, including me and Judson, and a few lucky supporters may get to read some classified military documents. Judson and I are deeply grateful for any support you can give, and we will prove it by personally recognizing each and every Patreon supporter on the air. We're also re-releasing a ton of episodes from Judson and I's old show, the UnPR podcast, and those are exclusively available to our Patreon supporters. Here's a little taste of what that's like.
There's a penis museum in Iceland. So they preserve penises in formaldehyde.
Oh,
Yep. All shapes and sizes. They have penises and penile parts from all different animals, mammals, whales to bears. It started out as a joke and it grew from there, much like many penises we all know, I'm sure. But actually, you know what? I think we have someone better to explain this. We actually have a correspondent in the field right now. I'm going to turn it over to our correspondent in the field, Tino.
Hi, everybody. I'm here. The penis museum. I can't talk on. It's cool. Bye.
You should totally go see it.
So please do help keep the show on the air by supporting us over at patreon.com/factsandfriends. And if you already have, thank you so very much.
So, unless you're living under a rock, in which case, is it nice? Do you need a roommate? You've probably heard that Disney went woke, and Ron Pudding Finger DeSantis is going to make them go broke.
He's building a prison there now.
Yes, that's what I've heard, yeah.
Ugh. Talk about weaponizing fucking government.
How did Disney go woke, you might ask?
Judson, how did Disney go woke?
Thank you, Tino. It's funny you should ask that. I don't know if you know this, but mermaids are canonically white because that's how God and or science made them.
Oh.
Also, by the way, with The Little Mermaid, can we also just mention that just from a scientific perspective, okay, it doesn't make a lot of sense to have someone with darker skin who lives deep in the ocean. I mean, if anything, not only should the Little Mermaid be pale, she should actually be translucent. If you look at deep sea creatures, they're like translucent. They have no kind of pigmentation whatsoever. And they're just like these horrifying, they look like skeletons floating around in the ocean. That's what the Little Mermaid should look like. She should be totally pale and skeletal, where you can see her skull through her face. And that would actually be a version of Little Mermaid that I would watch.
That's terrifying.
I feel like someone should make that version of The Little Mermaid and see if Matt Walsh will watch it.
It's a horror movie.
It is a horror movie.
Does she still sing?
That's a good question. We'll have to ask Matt Walsh, friend of the show, Matt Walsh.
So this is what you taught him about mermaids?
This is not what I taught him about mermaids.
Oh.
On top of the sheer audacity of casting a non-translucent person to play a fictional half-fish person, some changes have been made to a couple of the songs the fictional half-fish people and their animal friends sing, as the 34-year-old lyrics came off a little too dated in their gender role stereotypes. Now, we don't know what the new lyrics are, as the movie doesn't come out until the end of May, but they are absolutely, positively, without a doubt, and always a bad, nay, a woke idea. And so I'm sure I'm going to over-explain this because that's just what I do.
You? I was waiting for you to defend Matt Walsh, actually.
Later. But today we're going to go through what woke actually means, both originally and in our present hellscape. I'm going to lean heavily on the work of other writers who have already covered this topic, like Aja Romano, who wrote a piece for Vox in 2020 on the history of the term, and Adam Serwer, who has an excellent article out recently in The Atlantic describing some of its current usage. In fact, I'd argue we're probably among the last pseudo-news groups to tackle the subject. So late to the party that you'd be forgiven for wondering why we bothered to show up at all.
Did you just call us a pseudo-news group?
Yeah, how would you describe what we do, Tino?
Political comedy.
Oh, sorry.
Jesus. You are such a brand ambassador, you know?
Getting back to why we're covering this now. For one, we have an obligation as two mostly or extremely white guys to use the platform we have to draw attention to injustice and absurdity.
I'm Hispanic, for fuck's sake.
I said mostly, and the appropriation of woke by the right is an Everest of both. And two, this clip of Bethany Mandel.
Would you mind defining woke? Because it's come up a couple times, and I just want to make sure we're on the same page.
So, I mean, woke is sort of the idea that
awkward.
This is going to be one of those moments that goes viral. I mean, woke is something that's very hard to define, and we've spent an entire chapter defining it.
Oh.
It is sort of the understanding that we need to totally reimagine and redo society in order to create hierarchies of oppression. Sorry, it's hard to explain in a 15-second soundbite.
Well, yeah, look, your time.
I didn't feel an ounce of sympathy for her.
Not a bit. Nope. And I will grant that it probably is hard to explain in a 15-second soundbite. But she did write a whole chapter, and she couldn't really come up with anything off the cuff there.
That is, I disagree that it's hard to define in 15 seconds.
That's fair. You can disagree. I think that's okay.
Especially if that's your whole bag. Like, if you were in any way competent, you would have to have a 15-second explanation. You're doing a press junket.
I agree. That's fair. But Mrs. Mandel was being asked to simply provide a definition for this horrible thing that is destroying America, according to her, and she was utterly unable to do so without giving away the reality of what she meant, which pretty much demanded every scathing response it has received on the internet, including this one we're doing right now. The first time most white people heard the term woke was probably in regard to the Black Lives Matter movement, or for the Fox viewers, as the reason every business ever has failed. But the actual origins of the term go back as far as 1923, when Jamaican activist, journalist, and in the interests of full disclosure, vehement anti-Semite, Marcus Garvey issued a call to black citizens of every nation to wake up and engage in activism with him. In 1938, a full 3 years before the date which lives in infamy, February 10th, 1941.
Judson?
Yeah?
The day that lives in infamy is December 7th.
Sorry. The other
Pearl
day,
Harbor.
the other day that lives in infamy is February 10th. That is the day Tucker Carlson's dad was born.
Ugh.
It's pretty bad. So anyway, in 1938, blues musician Leadbelly told an interviewer that black people, especially in the South, quote, best stay woke, keep their eyes open, end quote, in order to protect themselves from racial violence and police brutality. And this was the meaning of woke for 80-something years.
Right.
To be awake to the realities of racial injustice and the threat of violence. Head on a swivel, alert and aware. A New York Times piece in 1962 by William Melvin Kelly didn't explicitly define woke, but it implied a similar usage and also explained black slang and how ridiculous white people sound when appropriating it, which is somehow eerily prescient for where we find ourselves today.
It was something mothers told their kids to keep them safe.
Yeah. I mean, it still is. Right? We just had the case of the young 16-year-old boy who rang the wrong doorbell and was shot twice for it.
By an 80-year-old white guy.
So the original definition, with minor variations, carried on mostly under the radar of white Americans until 2008, when Erykah Badu released an updated version of a song by funk singer Georgia Ann Muldrow, Master Teacher, with the refrain, I Stay Woke. Now, whether you heard that album or not, the phrase's political meaning saw a resurgence in the relative infancy of the social media age and spread like wildfire after 2014 and the Ferguson protests. It was prominently featured in a song by Childish Gambino, which was then used by Jordan Peele in his horror film Get Out. Woke just seemed to be everywhere.
And it had a very specific meaning.
It did. And that started to bother people in the media.
Well, in certain segments of the media.
segments of the media.
I like to call it the right-wing misinformation media.
Accurate. But they pushed back against this, quote, new concept of woke as being performative in nature. Because if you can't criticize your opponent's arguments, then the next best thing is to just criticize your opponents. Am I right?
Yeah, it is funny. One of the most performative theatrical sides, the right, would criticize, never mind, every fucking accusation, etc. Carry on.
Being woke, wokeness, wokeism, these all became sarcastic slurs hurled at anyone espousing the ideas of racial or social justice, equity, inclusion, diversity, or just plain empathy. They were virtue signaling their wokeness. They weren't sincere in their beliefs that black people's lives mattered to them. They just didn't want to fail the ideological purity test of the left, seeing other people as people. Which, as far as purity tests go, feels pretty fair to me. And now, woke has morphed yet again to encompass everything the right finds objectionable. The formerly richest man in the world moans about the woke mind virus destroying civilization.
Is that Elon Musk?
That is Elon Musk, yeah. Which I think means possibly forcing him to pay decent salaries to his employees and not allowing him to pay for oral sex through a horse barter system.
Is that a thing?
You didn't know he offered to pay for a blowjob with a horse?
No.
Oh, yeah, Elon Musk. Yeah, he supposedly offered an employee a horse in exchange for sexual favors.
Interesting. Does that work?
I don't think it did, but you would think a billionaire could figure out how to pay for a blowjob. I don't understand why these... Anyway, sorry.
I was just thinking, where can I get a horse? Apparently it didn't work. Carry on, I'm sorry.
A 2024 also-ran GOP presidential non-contender Nikki Haley insists wokeness is worse than the COVID that killed her sister-in-law, along with nearly 7 million others.
And this is a big issue in the Republican primary as well, woke and wokeness, and what that means for families around the country. You're quoted saying wokeness is a virus more dangerous than any pandemic, hands down. So for those families who look at you saying that and say, I don't know if wokeness, this pandemic took my family member. What do you say to them?
Well, I have friends and family members. My sister-in-law died from COVID. So, look, there's no one closer to it than our family, and we share that grief with all the other families. And that's the reason why I think we need to hold China accountable for exactly what they did to many families. But when you talk about wokeness, don't underestimate the dangers of what this is doing. The wokeness has caused so much damage to our children that we can't have that happen anymore. It is a plague that will impact them for the rest of their lives lives if we don't put a stop to it. It's dangerous. It's unhealthy. We're seeing it with anxiety and stress on our kids, and we've got to put an end to it.
It just sounds like a generic boogie monster, the way she describes it.
Right, like, could you tell me what wokeness means from that clip?
Let's ask Bethany Mandel. Oh, wait.
Right. The way she's describing it, we have woke banks failing, woke universities wokening students with woke textbooks, woke politicians pushing woke legislation like stopping the murder of woke 9-year-olds with presumably anti-woke AR-15s, woke entertainment companies allowing woke unions to demand woke wages and woke benefits. Its usage by conservative media and politicians and force-fed in what I imagine to be a Clockwork Orange style to its viewers has become so broad as to be utterly meaningless. Which brings us back to Bethany Mandel and her failure to articulate a definition of the word she finds to be so objectionable. She knew, as she panicked in that moment, that she couldn't say what all the dog whistles the right has been using mean. After some time to collect herself, she did eventually offer a definition on Twitter. Quote, a radical belief system suggesting that our institutions are built around discrimination and claiming that all disparity is a result of that discrimination. It seeks a radical redefinition of society in which equality of group result is the endpoint enforced by an angry mob. End quote.
Okay, so you did that in less than 15 seconds. I just want to point that out.
That part I did?
I'm just saying she could have had that ready for her interview.
She absolutely could have had that ready for her interview. Yeah, it feels like that's the sort of thing you should have, just on a note card somewhere.
I mean,
in case you get asked.
She disproved her claim that you can't describe it in 15 seconds.
Yes, you're correct.
Okay.
And friend of the show, Ben Shapiro, offered a similar definition.
Friend of this show?
Some show. I don't know.
You've been out making friends that I don't know about. I wouldn't be surprised, to be honest, with some of the people you've been defending.
Ben Shapiro tweeted, wokeness claims, 1, Western civilization and its institutions were and are discriminatory and serve the purposes of those in power, typically white straight men. 2, that discrimination is both historic and ongoing, and all group disparities are explained by it. Discuss.
Well, that's what we're doing.
This definition is maybe worse than just being unable to answer in the first place. Like, 1, American institutions and civilization were all founded on discrimination, unless they aren't defining slavery and its successors as discriminatory in nature, I guess. But otherwise, this is just a plain fact, no matter how many times you decry it as radical. Maybe we've made progress since then, maybe not. But outside of Florida, where teaching these facts is now illegal, every 4th grader should know enough to laugh off this objection. And 2, claiming that all disparities are related to discrimination is a straw man argument. No one is seriously arguing this, just disingenuous detractors like Shapiro and Mandel. Adam Sower argues in his piece for The Atlantic that for the right, woke just means liberal now, which I agree is one of their usages. Just listen to this clip of Ronald Puddinghand saying woke something like 6 times in 20 seconds and see if you can tell me what the fuck it's supposed to mean in context, besides being a synonym for democratic.
We fight the woke in the legislature. We fight the woke in the schools. We fight the woke in the corporations. We will never, ever surrender to the woke mob. Florida is where woke goes to die.
So I think the term is even broader than just being a stand-in for liberal or socialist or whatever.
I definitely agree with that.
What woke really means, in the context of conservative media and politicians anyway, is whatever they're mad at today. Whatever is currently triggering them, for lack of a better term.
Okay, I don't agree with that.
What do you think it means in that case?
I mean, I don't completely disagree with you, but here's what they're doing. Okay. When they say something is woke or when they reject wokeness, it's a way for them to avoid saying, I hate facts, or yes, I'm racist.
Yep.
Right? So they say woke instead of coming right out and saying those things, which are positions they hold. But now it's this, woke is a dog whistle for that, essentially.
They're using it to cover up the fact that their beliefs are somewhat distasteful to most people in this country. That the racism and the misogyny.
Didn't someone say woke is downright anti-Christian? And that kind of gets to the point of it where, like, if you approve of LGBTQ people and them having civil fucking rights, then you're quote unquote woke.
Right.
Well, back when I was in college, they still hated us, but they would just say it differently.
Yeah. They would just say they hated you.
They'd just come right out and say it.
Exactly.
Gay people can't get married
Westboro
because that
Baptist Church still does it,
right,
I've heard.
God hates fags. I mean, now that they can't say it, they're furious.
And they're using this as code. Exactly. I mean,
Right. So they have a code word.
It's the let's go Brandon.
It really is, except it's caught on. You've got people who, even across the political spectrum, who use the word more or less in the way the right intends it to be used. It's this language war that the right's been waging for decades.
Which they're really good at, unfortunately.
And winning. It's so frustrating that we don't fight back. It's why I won't use the Trump social media name. I call it bullshit social. I'm not going to let them win those language wars.
Right.
Anyone says woke, I'm going to tell them that it's not a real thing. I'm not going to just start using it in the language. And I think that's what a responsible journalist or a responsible actor talking about these issues has to do. You have to push back on the language.
I agree.
The Wall Street fucking Journal pushed back on ProPublica using super yacht in their reporting. They said it was intentionally provocative or something.
Yeah. Should it have been mega yacht?
There's actually, no, it's like a designation. It qualifies as a super yacht.
Right,
so
right.
They didn't even do it, but
adverbial impropriety or something like that they accused them of. It was...
Language is important. You know, we were talking about not ceding ground to the Second Amendment liars.
Sure.
A few shows ago.
Yeah.
And I feel like we can't cede this language ground either.
So you want to reclaim woke? I guess it's not ours to reclaim in the first place.
I say we get rid of woke. I say this is the Scooby-Doo moment where you pull that woke mask off and you say, this is what you really mean. This is what you're saying. And you use this word as your boogeyman. You've got people joining in on, like I said, across the political spectrum, just using woke. It's not a thing.
It's not their thing. That's for sure.
My whole thing going into this discussion is woke isn't a real thing.
The way they use it.
The way they use it. It just isn't. It started as something. Now it's the boogeyman for, it's the new Muslim. You know, like in the early 2000s after 9/11, Islam and Muslim was all things evil, right?
Yeah. Socialism has gone through that cycle, right?
So now it's woke. What wokeness really means is just like treating each other respectfully and trying to understand one another and get along.
And realize that there's a nasty history to this country that, you know, we have to acknowledge before we can ever stand a chance of moving beyond it.
Well, that flies in the face of quote unquote American
of course.
exceptionalism.
Right. And again, everything I've just said is illegal in Florida.
Right, exactly.
And I really, and because of that, I really need to teach, what do you call him? Ron DeMantits? Is that his name?
I do call him Ron DeMantits. You hate that, but I love it. Like, if the actor they had cast in the Puddin' Fingers video had like these big man tits, which he has, he tries to cover them up with a blazer, right? And you had like these chubby little sausage fingers just like smearing the pudding half in his mouth. That would have been so much more effective.
I agree.
Now I don't want to eat pudding though, ever again in my life.
But anyway, I need to show Ron DeMantits how this is supposed to be done. Tino, start the clock. Potato Head went woke by dropping the Mr. Nike is woke for hiring an athlete, while Disney is woke for firing another. Plus, you know, mermaids aren't black and song lyrics are written directly onto stone tablets and are forever after in violet. M&M's went woke and are no longer the fuckable candy-coated chocolates they once were. Skittles is probably woke for tasting like a pride flag or something equally dumb. America went woke by electing a black president. Then Hamilton was woke for casting non-white actors. Supporting the rights of trans kids and adults to simply exist is woke. Abortion rights are woke. You're woke for acknowledging basic historical facts. I'm woke for understanding and accepting math. Just yesterday, Putting Three Fingers, or the boy who cried woke, ramped up his everything I hate is woke rhetoric by tweeting, "Woke represents a war on truth. We must wage a war on woke," which is a hell of an accusation/admission regarding truth from the guy Fox News desperately wants to be president. What it comes down to is conservatives want to lock in the status quo in perpetuity, or else return to some mythical time in their imagination where June Cleaver always has dinner ready on time for Ward, Wally, and the Beeve, where both white and black people know their place, and where gay and trans people are once again kind enough to pretend to not exist. Ironically, or perhaps predictably, the people tediously crying woke at everything that scares or offends them only have this nightmarish version of the American dream to offer as an alternative. Thanks, but I'd rather stay woke. We'll be right back. The Facts and Friends podcast is brought to you by people like you. More and more, corporate America is taking over the podcast scene. Your support helps stave off a complete takeover. Please take a moment to share the podcast with your friends and followers via social media or word of mouth. And don't forget to leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Thank you so much for helping out. It really does mean a lot.
Thank you all so much for listening to the show this week. The Facts and Friends podcast is independently created from start to finish by the two of us, with occasional but valuable contributions from some of our very smart, very talented friends. Also, sometimes Jamie participates. Before we get to our closed topic, I just wanted to ask that you please help the show out by supporting us over on Patreon at patreon.com/factsandfriends. If you can't spare a few bucks right now, we totally understand. And we just ask that you help us by telling your like-minded friends in real life or social media to listen and subscribe like all the cool kids. Another totally free way you can help keep Facts and Friends on the air is by giving us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. Those help push the podcast to eyeballs that might not otherwise see it.
Eyeballs and ear holes.
Okay, ear hole. We're here on the back half of season 3, and we're so close to meeting the goals we set at the beginning of the season. So please do what you can to help us stay on the air for season 4 and beyond. So Judson, I thought your piece on wokeness was excellent, but you did get one really important fact completely wrong. And you're not going to believe this, but...
Of course I'm not.
You said near the top of your wokeness piece that we don't know what the new lyrics of the Little Mermaid songs are.
Yeah, I was looking for them. I couldn't find them, yeah. Did you find them?
Yeah, we have a copy of one of the songs.
Oh.
So one of the songs that was problematic was Kiss the Girl because the original lyrics didn't really go over the consent question.
Right.
So Lin-Manuel Miranda rewrote some of the lyrics to do that, but he went way overboard. It's basically now, the title's not even the same. It's called Clutch Your Pearls. And... instead of Kiss the Girl, and it's basically a huge fuck you to the right wing and Ron DeSantis and people who use the word woke. I thought we could play that for our audience.
I think that we definitely should.
Okay.
There you see her, sitting there across the way. She don't got a lot to say, but there's something about her. Is it a trick of the light, or does she look less white? Might want to clutch those pearls. Nike and Hershey's, now Budweiser is going gay. Next it will be Chick-fil-A, and it threatens your penis. We done replaced your flag with Biden's rainbow rag. Go on and clutch your pearls. Sha-la-la-la-la, the country's doomed. We got your kids all groomed. Go on and clutch your pearls. Sha-la-la-la-la, gay trans bi bring teardrops to your eye. Go on and clutch your pearls. Gender neutral, affordable electric cars, drag shows at the local bars. White Jesus is weeping. Cry out for school book bans. Go shoot your Bud Light cans. Oh, while you clutch your pearls. Sha-la-la-la-la, they, them, theirs don't want your thoughts and prayers. You got to clutch your pearls. Sha-la-la-la, teach your homeschooled class with your head up your ass. Teach kids to clutch their pearls. Sha-la-la-la, if we don't agree, just scream, don't tread on me. Oh, while you clutch your pearls. Sha-la-la-la, let the music play. We turn the frogs all gay, so you would clutch your pearls. Clutch your pearls. Clutch your pearls. Go on, give them a good squeeze. Clutch your pearls.
Did somebody say give him a good squeeze?
Thank you all so much for listening. Despite what you just heard, please don't forget to support us however you can.
No, we totally understand if you don't.
We will chat again soon. I really want to do my review for Cocaine Bear. Maybe we'll throw that up on Patreon.
Oh, that sounds good.
Okay, we'll see you next week.
Take care, everyone.
So we just heard from lawyers representing Dominion Voting Systems after the company settled with Fox. The attorney, Justin Nelson, announced the deal. It's a really unbelievable figure. Fox is going to pay Dominion Voting Systems $787 million $500,000. Dominion's lawyer saying, quote, today represents a ringing endorsement for truth and for democracy. Fox trying to put a positive face on what can only be interpreted as one of the ugliest and most embarrassing moments in the history of journalism. Fox issued a statement saying, quote, we are pleased to have reached a settlement of our dispute with Dominion Voting Systems. We acknowledge the court's rulings finding certain claims about Dominion to be false. The settlement reflects, I'm sorry, this is going to be difficult to say with a straight face. This settlement reflects Fox's continued commitment to the highest journalistic standards. We are hopeful that our decision to resolve the dispute with Dominion amicably instead of the acrimony of a divisive trial allows the country to move forward.